My name is Meredith. I'm 24, and I work the night shift at a tiny gas station off County Road 11. It's the kind of place most people don't even notice unless they're out of gas or completely lost. It started on a Thursday night around 1 a.m. A man walked in, mid-40s, maybe older. He had a green coat, messy hair, and dry lips like he hadn't smiled in years. He didn't head for the coffee or chips like most people. He just stood near the counter, staring at me with this strange kind of familiarity. "You always work this late?" he asked. Yeah, mostly," I said. He smiled. "I figured. I've passed through a few times, noticed it's always you." That unsettled me more than I let show. "Meredith, right?" I froze. I wasn't wearing a name tag. I was about to ask him how he knew, but he motioned to the whiteboard where I had written, "Cinnamon coffee is back." Most people dot their I's like circles. You use little slashes. It's very specific, thoughtful. He didn't buy anything, just stood there for another minute, watching me, like he was studying my reactions. "I'm Paul," he said. "Just curious, that's all." And then he walked out into the fog. After that, he started showing up randomly. Not every night. Not enough to scream stalker out loud, but often enough that I stopped assuming it was a coincidence. Sometimes he'd come inside. Sometimes he'd just sit in his car near the edge of the lot with his headlights off. One night, he said, "You're quieter tonight." "Long shift," I muttered. He looked around the store slowly, like he was taking inventory of everything. "It must get lonely. Just you out here in the dark. No one else for miles." "I'm fine," I replied. "You ever get scared, being a woman alone at night?" His voice wasn't threatening. That's what made it worse. It was curious, neutral, like he was asking about the weather. "Do you need anything else?" I asked. He tilted his head. "You always keep the door to the back room locked. Smart. I noticed you check it around 2 a.m. almost every night." My stomach turned. I didn't answer. "I'll let you get back to it," he said with a soft, almost apologetic smile. "Didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." After that night, I started walking to my car with my keys between my fingers. I kept a tire iron under the counter. I changed the curtains in my apartment, started showering with the bathroom door locked even when no one else was home. There were nights he didn't come. Sometimes I'd go a whole week without seeing him, but it didn't help. It actually made it worse because I never knew when he'd reappear. The time I came back from my 10-minute break to find a Polaroid on the counter, it was me, refilling the windshield washer bin behind the station. It was taken from that night, close up, way too close. There was no note, but the slash dot on the word "I" and the word "windshield" on the bin label had been circled in red ink. The next time he came in, I told him to leave. I told him if he stayed, I'd call the police. Paul just nodded. "I get it. I've been too forward." "You've been following me," I said, my voice cracking. "I just think you're the kind of person who's used to being misunderstood. I thought maybe you'd appreciate someone who pays attention." "That's not paying attention, that's obsession," I replied. He didn't flinch. "Would it be easier if I wore a smile and brought a soda every night? Would I be more normal if I just talked about sports and pretended I didn't notice the way your shoes are always a half size too big? Or how your left eyelid twitches when you're tired?" I was already dialing 911. He didn't stop me. The police came quickly, and he didn't resist. He just stood there, arms at his sides, waiting. They searched his car and found a notepad filled with dates and times. My schedule. Notes about my walk, my clothes, my groceries. One page just had my name written over and over again in tighter and tighter loops until it turned into scribbles. The restraining order went through that week. Now I don't work nights anymore. But even now, when I drive home and see headlights behind me for too long, I feel the back of my neck tingle. And sometimes, I still think about the way he said my name, like he'd been practicing it. My name is Daniel, I'm 29, and I work the overnight shift at a small rural motel. It's not a chain, just a family-owned place with 2 floors and maybe 25 rooms in total. The way it's set up, there's a main office with a front desk, and behind the desk is a hallway that leads to a back office. That back office has a couch, a mini fridge, and a TV. There's a little speaker back there that dings whenever someone rings the bell at the front desk. It was about 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night back in fall. It was cold outside, maybe in the 40s, and the parking lot was empty except for 4 or 5 cars belonging to guests. I heard the bell. I stood up from the couch in the back and went into the main office. When I got there, nobody was standing at the desk. The lobby was empty. I looked outside through the glass doors, but the road was dark and empty. Not even 10 minutes later, the bell rang again. I jumped up and walked quickly into the main office, but once again it was empty. This time I went outside. I walked to the edge of the sidewalk and looked both ways, but there wasn't a single sign of life out there. I went back inside and sat behind the front desk instead of going to the back. Then the bell rang again. I snapped my head up so fast that it hurt. The lobby was still empty. Nobody in sight. I stood up and walked around the front desk to make sure nobody was hiding, but there was no one. I checked the bathrooms in the lobby. I even stepped outside again. Nothing. I decided to sit down in the chair right behind the front desk. If someone was sneaking around and ringing the bell just to mess with me, I wanted to be there to catch them. I turned the lobby lights down a little so the room was dim, and I just sat there listening. 15 minutes passed, then 20. My eyes started to get heavy. Just as I was letting myself relax and doze off, it happened. The bell rang. Only this time I saw what was doing it. A pale hand came up from under the front desk, reaching over the counter and pressing the bell right in front of me. I jumped up so fast the chair almost fell over, and I bolted down the hall into the back office. I slammed the door and locked it, and I stood there in the dark, my chest pounding. I forced myself to look at the security monitors. On the lobby feed, I saw the chair had tipped over. The counter looked empty. Then in the bottom corner of the frame, I saw movement. A head poked out from behind the desk. I couldn't make out details, just the outline and the glint of eyes staring straight into the camera. I backed away from the monitor. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 with shaking hands. I whispered to the dispatcher that someone had broken in and was hiding in the lobby. While I was on the phone, I watched the monitor. The person's head disappeared, and then I saw them crawl out from behind the desk on hands and knees. They crawled to the door and then stood up. They were tall and wearing a hoodie with the hood pulled tight, and their posture was hunched over. They turned and started walking around the lobby like they were looking for something. Then they turned and walked out of the camera frame toward the hallway that led to the back office. I pressed my back against the locked door. A moment later, the knob rattled. Just once, a very slow rattle, and then nothing. After what felt like forever, I heard slow footsteps moving away. I rushed back to the monitor, and the man was pacing around the lobby again. At one point, he stood in front of the glass doors and just stared outside like he was waiting for someone. Then he walked over to the brochure rack and started flipping through the papers, like he was sarcastically killing time. Finally, I saw flashing blue and red lights through the parking lot cameras. The cops pulled up. 2 cars. The man must have seen it too because he suddenly bolted out of frame. When the officers cleared the building, they found a large rock near the front door that was presumably used to prop it open, but they didn't find him inside. He was gone. They told me whoever it was must have slipped out as soon as they pulled up. Now every time I hear that bell at night, I think of that night. I don't think I'll ever look at that desk the same way again. I used to work night shift at a small hotel, and this happened about a year ago. The hotel was small, only 3 floors and maybe 40 rooms total. It wasn't a busy place. Usually we only had about 10 or 15 rooms filled on weeknights. I worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The lobby wasn't big, just the desk and some couches off to the side with a TV, and then some vending machines in the corner. Behind the desk was a little office where I had a computer and a chair with a glass window so I could see the lobby while I sat in there. At night, the front doors locked automatically, so guests had to buzz in, and I would press a button to let them through. This man came in around 11. He looked mid-40s, tall, kind of skinny, wearing jeans and a baseball cap, carrying a backpack. He walked up to the desk and asked if we had a room for the night. I told him yes and gave him the price. He nodded and pulled out a card. I swiped it, it went through, and I gave him a key card for room 214 on the second floor. I remember he looked at me for a second too long before he left. He had this blank expression, and his eyes stayed on me for 3, maybe 4 seconds after I handed him the key. Then he turned and walked off toward the elevator. Around midnight, I looked up, and he was back in the lobby. He didn't come to the desk, he just walked past me and sat down in the lounge area with the couches. The TV wasn't on, but he just sat down facing it. After half an hour, I realized he was literally just sitting there doing nothing. He wasn't on his phone or reading. He wasn't even dozing off. He was just staring straight ahead at the blank screen. When I walked across the lobby to grab water from the vending machine, I felt him turn his head and watch me the whole way. I didn't look at him directly, but I could feel his eyes on me until I was back behind the desk. Around 1 a.m., I was checking the reservation system on the computer because I was bored, and that's when I noticed something weird. I pulled up the occupied room list and saw that room 214 said vacant. I double-checked, because I literally just checked this guy in an hour earlier. I looked at the check-in logs, and there was nothing for him. No name, no charge, nothing. Then I went into the transaction screen to make sure his card had gone through earlier, and it showed no payments. I picked up the phone and called room 214. It rang like 10 times, but no answer. Then I checked the keycard entry log, which tells you if the door to that room was opened that night, and it showed nothing. No one had entered the room. That's when I realized he never even went to the room after I gave him the card. I looked over into the lounge, and there he was, still sitting there staring at the TV that wasn't even on. I started to get this awful feeling in my chest. I sat there debating what to do. Part of me thought maybe the system just glitched, but the fact that the room had no entry log and no charge made it pretty clear he wasn't even checked in. Around 1:30, I walked over and asked if everything was okay. He turned his head and looked at me with no expression, and he told me he just couldn't sleep. Then he turned back toward the TV. Around 2, I noticed he wasn't sitting in the lounge anymore. My stomach dropped right away because I didn't see him in the lobby at all. I scanned the area, and then I spotted him standing at the end of the hallway by the bathrooms, half hidden in the dark. He was just standing still. He stood there for a while, and then slowly walked back and sat in the lounge again like nothing happened. I called my manager at home and explained what was going on. She sounded tired and told me to just keep an eye on him and call the police if he did anything threatening. I checked the security cameras after that. I saw him on the first floor hallway camera. He walked all the way down the hall, stopped at the end, stood there for several minutes, then walked back. Later, he went into the stairwell and stayed in there for about 10 minutes. I don't know what he was doing in there. By 3:30, I couldn't take it anymore. So I called the non-emergency police line and explained that there was a man in the hotel who I didn't think was a guest. While I was waiting, I noticed he moved again, this time closer to the desk. He was standing maybe 15 feet away, just watching me. He didn't blink much, he just stared. At around 3:50, the buzzer went off. I thought maybe it was the cops already, but it was just another guest coming back late. I let him in quickly, and the man turned his head and watched the guest walk past. His eyes followed him the whole way across the lobby. A few minutes later, the man disappeared again. I checked the cameras and saw him standing outside one of the guest room doors on the first floor, just standing there. That's when I called actual 911. I told them he was outside a guest's room, and I didn't know what he was trying to do. When he came back to the lobby, he walked right up to the desk this time and leaned over the counter. He looked at me and asked if there was any food. His voice was so low it was disturbing. I told him there were vending machines in the corner. He gave a small smile, then walked away. Finally, around 4:10, 2 officers showed up. I let them in and pointed right at him. They walked over and talked to him for a few minutes. They asked for his ID and asked him questions I couldn't hear. One of the officers came back and explained that the guy wasn't a guest at all. The credit card he gave me was stolen, and he had no bags or reservation. He had just been pretending so he could get access to the building. They charged him with trespassing and the stolen card. After they left, I sat there shaking until my shift was over. The part that messed me up the most was realizing he had been inside the hotel for hours, and what he could have done to me. I haven't worked the night shift since.